First of all, tell us how you two met and how this collaboration started.
I met Fernanda and Astrid at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival. I go to festivals for a living, and so when I go to festivals, I like to see 20 or 25 films. And the first time I saw their first film, I was late because I was coming from another theater. I was 15 minutes late. I walked in, I stayed for 15 minutes, and I was confused, and I left. The next day, I'm in line with an agent who I really respect. I told her what I walked out of, what I've seen, and I told her about her first film, and the agent said, "Jewerl, you've made a mistake. Go see that movie from the beginning." And I went and saw it, and it blew my mind. They weren't meeting people outside the festival, so I just sent them an email once a month saying, "Please meet with me. Please meet with me. I want to help you. Please meet with me." And they finally did after 9 months or 10 months or 11 months. And we started working on some projects together. So that's how we met.
And your collaboration with Astrid, this is the third feature you made together on top of all the short films. Tell us how your collaboration with Astrid started.
We met when we were film students, and Astrid was shooting her graduation film. And I think the creative chemistry between us and also with Jimena Man, the photographer, was so great that we decided to found a production company with which we could develop our feature films. So we did that, and we began, I produced what she directed, she produced what I directed, and with Identifying Features, our previous film, we began co-writing, co-editing. So I think it was like a natural step to co-direct because we were already making the whole process together.
So for SUJO specifically, how did you divide up your creative responsibilities?
Well, SUJO was an original idea by Astrid, so I think she's the main director. She wouldn't say so, but I think the intuition came from her. And so the actors were primarily her responsibility. I was participating perhaps from the third, the fourth take on, and we were constantly discussing. Sometimes when there were two actors in the scene, we separately direct each of them, and that was a lot of fun. I was a little bit more on the side of the camera, but before the week of every week the shooting started, we would draw. Well, she would draw because I can only make like sticks and circles. Also with the DP, so we could decide what we wanted to do, what the objectives we had with each scene, so we wouldn't discuss on set and lose precious time. And I think that was really useful and was also a lot of fun.
So like storyboards.
Yes.
That's amazing. So the film is set in two places. The first half is in Guanajuato, which is your home state, and the second half in Mexico City, which is Astrid's home state. How was shooting in these two separate cities like?
I think for us, the most valuable resource in a production is time. So we spend a lot of time going to scouting, location scoutings, and we try to dedicate all the time we need to wait for the adequate light. We go to locations that we have known for many years because I was born there in Guanajuato with the photographer, also with the production designer. And I think it was a matter in Guanajuato of making a relationship with the communities. And in Mexico City, that Astrid knows really well, it was like a parallel process of going to those places that she knows and also tending relationship with those communities, like in this big market that it's called Central de Abastos, and it's the market that feeds the entire, not only Mexico City, but the surrounding areas. So it was going with the people and with the workers and knowing them and also observing, so we could shoot without disturbing the process, that it's also like very fine machinery. And with the National University, well, we both are graduates from that university. I'm a graduate of Latin American Studies, and Astrid is a graduate of the film school. And it took us quite a while to get the permission, but that university, I think, for Mexicans, it's really symbolic, because we have struggled for many generations to keep that university free. So I think it's the main pipeline of social, I don't know the word exactly in English, but that allows people from different backgrounds to get a college education. So being able to shoot there, I think it was very special for the both of us. Social mobility, yes.
And Jewerl, maybe as a producer, you can speak to how pre-production phases were like, about splitting productions in two different places.
You know, for a movie that's, you know, I am an American. I speak English really, really well. I don't speak Spanish really, really well. The places on a movie like this where I'm the most helpful are in the script stage, in the development stage, and in the shaping of the movie and edit. You know, as I found on the other movies that I've made, you know, a movie is made 3 times. When you write a movie, you're making one movie. When you shoot a movie, you're making another movie. And then when you're rediscovering the movie in the edit, it becomes something else. It becomes what it wants to be. And with this movie in particular, they had shot so much footage, they were really attached to some of the original ideas in the movie. And in many ways, we discovered a new movie in the edit that just that said more of what they wanted to say. And so that's where we did a lot of that kind of creative work.
And you mentioned a little bit about the university. I felt like the part with the university student, as university teacher, was so powerful and impactful. And I learned that you were also a teacher as well. Did your personal experience inform that character?
Well, Astra and I have both been teachers for some time, but I think that part for the both of us was the more challenging. When we were discussing the script with some colleagues, some of them said that we should finish the story when SUJO leaves his hometown. I think because in Mexico we feel so overwhelmed by the violence and by this very complicated reality that so those colleagues felt like science fiction, a boy trying to get to college, a boy with this background. But for us, that was the most meaningful part, because we were trying to think about the very specific conditions that could allow a boy to try to give his back to violence. So finding the right actor for this part, I think, was really critical. And we met Sandra Lorenzano, which is, she's not an actress, she's a writer in Mexico, a very well-known writer, and also a professor. We met her by chance. And when we were just talking and listening to her own story, we realized that she was meant, if of course, if she wanted for this part. And her own story of emigrating from the dictatorship in Argentina to Mexico at an early age, I think really helped us to reshape that last part. And so we were inspired by a teacher of us, Susan Corda, who is an American editor. But then that part was reshaped by Sandra's story.
And expanding on this topic of education, can you speak to the other forms of education that's not academic that we see SUJO have?
Well, that's really important for us to talk about a child, a boy. And that was something that made us a little nervous, because I think when we were younger, both Atra and I had promised ourselves to tell stories about female characters. But Sujo just came into our lives, the story of Sujo. So we needed to talk about masculinity and about a boy through the eyes of women. So we put a lot of detail and effort in the character of Nemesia, the aunt. And with that, we also wanted to talk about, like you said, not this education in terms of intellectual achievement, but in terms of the construction of a personality. And also to tell that through the eyes of a boy. So that's how and why we introduce these magical or mystical elements that helped us talk about how a child can feel death, or this really difficult but also unavoidable things in everyone's life. The infinite, the starry night, death, and everything that has an ending. So Nemesia for us was that, the construction of a different masculine sensibility that allows him to be a different man.
And I want to focus more a little bit on Amicia and Rosales' relationship. These two women who raised the three boys together, who love each other, kind of represent, like you said, a symbol that is different or against what the toxic masculinity and patriarchy represents. Can you talk about creating these two characters and their relationship?
Early on in the writing process, when Astrid had written the first two drafts, she already had these two characters. And being ourselves lesbians, we wanted to have, it more than wanted, it was natural to have a lesbian relationship in the film, but we didn't want to have that in the foreground, because we wanted to tell the whole film in different stages from his emotional perspective. So the relationship between Rosalia and Nemesia is there as an unquestionable fact of life, but it's not named. It's just there, and it's also just there for the rest of the kids. And we didn't realize it was so subtle that in some countries the film was screened in some places where homosexuality is forbidden, that they haven't seen it. So it had played there, and we were very happy that it did.
That's kind of beautiful. And you mentioned the mysticism that's in the film and, you know, the existentialism. Can you talk about how you played with these notions of destiny and inheritance in Sujo's character?
Well, for one part about all this, the mysticism, I think in Mexico, that's something that really lives in our culture. And also in this particular area, the mountain that we shot in, it's sacred for the community. So we wanted to express that, and also to give this character or this feeling that there's more to life than the violence. And at the same time that nature and all the complexity of the universe is still there, and a little bit separated from our daily struggles. So that's part of that life. And can you remind me of the second question
about inheritance?
Inheritance. I think that's the first idea that we had when we were, and I'm trying to explain a little bit. When we were preparing to shoot our previous film, Identifying Features, I think we were in shock of the violence in Mexico, because we became adults with the surge of violence almost 20 years ago. So Identifying Features was about that. And when we were casting and looking for locations, we encounter a lot of children, actually, because they're children, 12, 13, 14, and adolescents that had already had the experience of migration, some of them. Some of them were already turned back from the United States, and also of displacement. They were thinking about leaving their hometown to Mexico City or to the other big cities. And some others were beginning to work in some capacity for the local cartels. So even though we were preparing for a shoot that other film, we knew we had to begin a story about the inheritance of these children that were not becoming adults, that were born into this cycle of violence. And that's how SUJO was born. And the main question is that, is there a possibility of change for that whole generation, particularly boys who are really vulnerable to recruitment? And well, I think our answer is in the film. And I think our fear was to be naive, but also we wanted to be really clear that we don't want to accept that the answer for our country, for a whole generation, is to accept violence and life as it is.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier about the motif of nature, and there's definitely a lot of that in animals as well, like the black dog and the horse. Can you talk about how you crafted this visual language of these motifs?
I think a lot of the discussion Astrid and I have is during the writing, and I think that makes us really free, because that's not expensive. You can imagine anything when you're writing. And then, as I was telling you, time, it's our most valuable resource. So we wanted to express this complexity of the universe beyond our daily struggles as humans with nature. And we took a lot of time going to those places, to these rural areas we love so much, and we know after many years of shooting in that area so well. And we just took the camera, and if we wanted to wait for a spider, we could take 4 hours, 5 hours looking for the spiders, for the moonlight, for the sunset. And I think that's the beauty of having all this time. We could make, for example, a shooting plan depending on the moon cycle. So we could make the night scenes with the full moon. And well, for us that was like a gift, that we could wait for the cycles of nature to shoot, wait for the landscape to change a little bit, so we could tell the story of the boy surrounded by the landscape.